close.
Okay, we're going to get started back now. Hope you had a chance to go to the bathroom, get a drink, eat a snack. I wanted to mention a special thank you at the Child Advocacy Center. We have a lot of people that help us out when we need things, so we are very thankful to Herndon Oil for providing your breakfast that you have on the table. Coke provided drinks, and Texas Roadhouse is going to be bringing your lunch. So we're very grateful that they were completely free to give to us today to have those things to make our training pleasant, because we all like to eat. So speaking of that, we're going to do a little door prize, because you know, if you've been to this training before, we like to give away stuff. So our beautiful intern, Savannah, has our first door prize. Life is hard. Your job is tough. You need to eat some chocolate. So we're going to give you a gigantic chocolate bar. Since we're trying to be contactless, I have a random selection, one of those random selection apps on my phone, and I'm not making this up. The name that came up was Stacy Ott. So Stacy, congratulations. You're welcome, Stacy. Thanks. Okay, let's do, Savannah, you want to do one more? Let's do the other one. We've got one more chocolate bar. I'm going to pick a name. Oh, I can't believe this. Julie Lindsay. Congratulations. Julie and Stacy work together at Henry County DHR. Julie is the director of Henry County DHR. Thank you. Hope you enjoy it. All right. We're going to turn it back over to Jason and Joe.
Did he take the liquor? So we're running a little bit ahead of time, and we'll kind of talk through a bunch of this. One of the biggest things that we push is intelligence-based trafficking investigations. We want to use data. We want to use all the intel that we can to build out our cases without victims, because going back to kind of what I said, if I have a dead guy laying here with a gunshot wound to the head, can I say, hey, bro, wake up real quick, just point me in the right direction, and we'll go? We can't do that, right? What do we rely on heavily? Somebody said, what was it? Yeah, evidence. Whether it be forensic, whether it be, hair follicle, anything like that, DNA, but we rely a lot on technology. So we're now in the days of, is there any way if somebody was to try to find out through legal process that I was in Dothan, Alabama today, that I could escape that? Not really, because they're going to do cell site tower history. They're going to be like, your cell tower, you were hitting on this tower. It triangulates in this direction, so we at least know you were in this geographical area, whether or not it be here at this museum or it looks like the jail over here maybe. You know I was in this area. Is the jail close by? Okay, cool. Last time we did a deal out of state, I did a John op, so I was like talking to these sex buyers. And when the guy's like, hey, let's make the deal, I wanted the address to go to. I just gave him the jail address, which was kind of similar. It was across the street. And this idiot's like, are you in jail? It's like, I just got out. And he's like, okay, cool, I'll come pick you up. And I was like, okay. So we just sat outside and watched this Yahoo driving around the jail. I mean, it was amazing. So we're really going to talk about intelligence-based investigations. Do you guys have these organizations, and if you're a part of one, I apologize, that they say, hey, look, we're here to help you, law enforcement. We are an intelligence-based organization. I'm former CIA, and by virtue of being former CIA, I'm like Jack Ryan, and I have access to this database that you don't have, and we have all this intel, and we're here to support your mission, and we'll help do it. OSINT investigation with an extraction at the end of the investigation. Do y'all have those groups popping up out here? If not, they're in Georgia, and they're really close, I promise. You're going to see it. They're going to come forward. They're going to be like, hey, we want to build out these open source investigations for you. We can tell you how to do trafficking investigations. I used to work for insert alphabetical soup, 3-letter agency that they worked for. Probably not really doing much of anything other than what 3-letter agencies do, but they're going to want to come help. We're going to talk about how to do this on your own and not involving all these former Navy SEAL special operation commandos who are here to save the day. Possibly, if this clicker will work. Okay, so basic intel. How do we even build out this stuff? How do we go find these people? Do you guys have a track in Dothan, Alabama? Can you pull up to First in Maine and have a line of females standing outside, scantily dressed, just like they do on Bissonnet in Houston? Is there a track, blade, whatever we want to call it? No. So we got to find them on the internet, right? We have to sift through our ads. We have to find ads that we want to target. We have to look for certain things. Most Vice units get on the internet. They go to, in this case, skipthegames.com, and they just start blast messaging everybody. Hey, babe, how you doing? Hey, babe, how you doing? And what are they doing? They're just waiting for somebody to message back. And they're like, oh, I'm great. Well, hey, let's do this, and then whatever. And the reality is that's failing miserably as an institution of law enforcement. We're not identifying victims. We're not finding victims. We're just making all these prostitution arrests and moving on. So obviously I tried to sanitize some of these as much as I can, but we want to target the ads that really kind of scream human trafficking. Is there anything about a certain ad, if I was to get online and look at a sex ad, that as an investigator or even a concerned citizen or soccer mom, that would make me think, hey, I think this person may be trafficked? What are things that we would look for? I didn't take the picture myself. It's big, right? Could mean that they have the one I like the most is why I put the phone on a timer. Fair enough. But it's pointed up and downward. Where's your tripod? Where's your really cool, $100 cell phone tripod that you used? Anything else? Yeah, do they look young? My favorite photographs that I come across are the photo of the girl, not taken by her, and in the mirror, you see him with the cell phone like this. I'm like, I don't know, the FBI calls this a clue. So we want to target and really look for certain ads. So what drew me to this young lady initially was that she's, as this one, not taking this photograph herself. Does it mean it's trafficking? No. Does it increase the likelihood that it could be? Of course. So that's what we want to target. So for the law enforcement, is anybody in here familiar with and utilize Spotlight? So you guys use Spotlight. Do you like it since it changed? No? Great, cool. They don't like it since it's changed. But Spotlight, what it does is I go to my sex ad, I input my cell phone number that's attached to that ad, and it will go back and they scrape numerous websites that are known for selling sex. And every sex ad that is affiliated with that phone number will then pop up. So now I have a database of all of these ads, we'll say 400 ads, that are all associated with one particular phone number. And one of the things that it does is it will map it for us. What's interesting is that I've seen it a million times. To be quite honest with you, it never hit until this came up and I was like, Dothan, Alabama, where the heck is that? And then I started noticing, oh, I had that case. Like, we just had a guy get sentenced to prison probably 2 weeks ago that they had come from Dothan, Alabama. They ended up in Waco, Texas, for Chip and Joanna Gaines, I'm sure. But they ended up, we had a problem, so he's in prison. But a ton of traffic coming in and out of here. So why does this map matter to me? Does anybody take a guess? They travel? Yeah, so it indicates travel. It's showing that, as an example, I can't really tell, it's kind of blurry. There's like 312 ads in Texas. There's like 190 in Louisiana. Why is that significant? It does a few things. For one, it tells us we have an interstate nexus. So if we want to file this federally and we want to work it as a 18 U.S.C. 1952, you are transportation in aid of racketeering enterprises. You are literally crossing state lines to engage in racketeering, to wit, prostitution, right, or promotion of prostitution. We have a federal statute that we can latch on that's really easy to charge. There's something else that it does for us. Does anybody in here have a 18 to 20-year-old son? Okay. Nobody in here who raised their hands is guilty of this. But let's be real. So I say I have an 18-year-old son, and he's in Waco, Texas. And he goes, you know what, Dad? I'm tired of this janky little town. Chip and JoJo get on my nerves. I'm going to LA. I'm like, cool. He's like, I'm driving. I'm like, see ya. So he gets in the car, or truck, because we all have trucks, and he starts driving west. Has anybody been to West Texas? It's like the Sahara. There ain't a thing. You ain't gonna get cell service. You're not gonna see anybody for like hundreds of miles. It's literally like 10 hours to El Paso. So he's chugging along at 18 years old. He's gonna save the world, and he breaks down and has a flat in far west Texas. What's gonna happen with that average 18-year-old male? The reality is he's gonna die of dehydration and starvation because he's too stupid to know how to change a tire, right? Is that probably what's gonna happen? He doesn't realize on the back of my registration sticker's a toll-free number I can call, and they're gonna send a trooper out, and the trooper's gonna change the tire for me. He's just gonna sit there with he's gonna die. The reason this is important, can you for 1 second even fathom the fact that this pretty young lady is burning up the country, selling herself to all of these maniac sex buyers who are probably in most cases rougher than traffickers with zero protection? Does that make any sense at all? So we're really starting to build out our intel, and we're building out what we're doing. And we'll actually build out some here in a minute and just kind of walk through why things are important, what they look like, and how we can target the right people. And again, this really goes back to Jason's previous presentation about bias. We have to overcome all that and realize that we're probably dealing with a trafficking victim based on what we have and the totality of the circumstances, that this person is likely being trafficked, which kind of leads me to another point. Can a prostitute be trafficked? A 100% consensual, I make money because this is what I choose to do with my body, can they be trafficked? Well, they can. They get snatched up and trafficked in a heartbeat. Can a trafficking victim be a prostitute? No. You're a victim of sex crimes. You're not a prostitute. You're a victim of sex crimes who's forced to get money. That's what it is. So building on that, we're gonna move into like track. Track is not a big thing here in Alabama. It is a big thing on the border. So southwestbordertrack.com came to be because some, scholar at the Attorney General's office in Arizona said, you know what? We're having a lot of money go south to Mexico for dope. That money is going via Western Union. So they showed up to Western Union and they said, hey, we're gonna sue you for your data. We want all wires going back and forth between Arizona and Mexico that are over $500, because we're scholars. We did this big study and we were able to show that anything over $500 is likely funding illicit activity, and anything under $500 is typically what's being sent to the home country by somebody who immigrated here to work. So we want everything over $500. And Western Union said what? Nope. So they're like, okay, let's take it to court. They won. So Western Union had to, back then, turn over 5 years worth of previous data of money orders going back and forth. So Arizona is now a little bit empowered, right? And they're like, hey, MoneyGram, we're coming for you. And MoneyGram said what? Nah, we'll just give it to you. Man, we ain't waste time. So now they're running something like 20 different money service businesses. Like, you go Walmart to Walmart, I'm gonna see you. You're doing any of that, I would sit on my computer and we're gonna pull it up and we're gonna watch. It initially went from there to New Mexico, to Texas, California, and border states. Now it's in California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Washington, Nevada, Colorado, Illinois, Ohio, and Florida. What's significant about that for the state of Alabama? Say that again? Well, you're not on there, but I can see any in or outbound from any of these states to anywhere in Alabama. So if you're sitting in Alabama and you're with, say, a bottom, and your bottom's out rolling the streets with you, she's out, whatever, and you're in Dothan and you're sending money back to Dip Dizzy Whizzle at 123 Main Street because he's the trafficker, and I'm able to say, hey, I've got this guy, let me look him up. Oh wow, he's getting money from this location, this location, this location. What does that tell me? He's probably the guy, right? Like, that's the one I want to be looking at. So they're also doing Bitcoin ATM, which I guess with Bitcoin you have to like present ID and do this. You have to present ID to get money orders. You can't just go to Walmart and be like, hey, I'm here to pick up my cash, and they're like, here. You got to show ID. So what is that doing? That's confirming, hey, look, this is the guy or gal. As an example, this is what we get back with track. So the young lady that we had the photograph of, that she's got these ads and she's not taking the photographs herself, and we run it and she's like in all of these locations, we will get a list of names. So as an example, when I run her phone number that's associated with all those ads, it comes back with her name on there. It says the sender phone number. So the phone number that's associated with this ad, or all of these ads, is sending money using that ID in all of these different locations to a male named Octarius Allen. I will caveat this, he's in federal prison now. Octarius Allen is getting his money associated with a phone number. Why would they do that? Because if something happens with the wire, you want to be notified that your money's, held up or something. So now I've got Octarius's phone number, his home address, and even to go further, it's going to tell me where he's picking up the money. So little does he know, right down the street from his 901 Twin Creek in DeSoto is a QT marked, and that's where he's going and picking it up. I can see if he does it there, Walmart, whatever. So we're able to combine our sex ads and locations of those with our financial transactions. Does that make sense? And a lot of this we'll pull in a bit, so it'll make a little more sense. OSINT, God bless you. OSINT, has anybody heard the term OSINT? This one is actually one of my favorite. It's this big CIA, FBI covert thing, and they're like, I did OSINT. Is anybody here trained in OSINT? I'll tell you what, you all are. If you've ever had a spouse that cheated on you, you know all about OSINT because you on the Googles like crazy, right? You want to know who is this man or woman. OSINT is it's open source intelligence. That's all it is. So when we think about what is open source intelligence, is a criminal history check open source intelligence? No. Can you just get on a criminal history? No. Is www.googles.com open source? Everything that comes back, if I was to search Jason Lundquist, Master of Criminal Justice, would it show me everything Jason Lundquist, MCJ? And everything I find about him is open source. So say I go to Jason's Facebook page, and I get on Jason's Facebook, and I'm like, oh man, I finally found this guy. Is everything on there open source? Of course. It's basically just anything we can find on the Googles. Is open source generally just blanket admissible in court for the DAs? Can I Google Jason Lundquist, MCJ in Dothan, Alabama? He pops up on the news thing he just did, and we go, look, there's our evidence. Can we just admit that? Not really. It leads us in the direction that we need to follow up with our legal service. So then I would turn around and I would be like, hey, start issuing subpoenas. Now I want the cell site tower. Now I can say Jason was here because he was triangulated in this area. So it's just things that lead us to another thing. If you got kids, we all know everybody's up in their kids' business, hopefully. It's the same thing. We're finding out who you're hanging with, who you're running with, who just tagged you on Facebook, who's this kid, who's that person. That's all it is. Can we build trafficking cases using open source intelligence? Absolutely. So then we got to start thinking about traffickers. What do traffickers like to do with everything they got? They want to show you everything, right? Like they're like, I got my Gucci shoes. I actually saw a trafficker one time. He cared so much about his stuff. I kid you not, it was so amazing. We're sitting there doing surveillance and he comes out of the hotel and he's like this. Can anybody take a guess as to why he was walking like that? I thought he had like some kind of knee problem, and if he took off running, I was just gonna push him and it was game over, right? Anybody got an idea? He didn't want to crease him. He didn't want to have the crease, so he's doing the, like this. Come on, bro. That's how much he cared about what he had. Hey, can you help me change this? Because I'm tech stupid. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna sit down and we're gonna walk through kind of what this looks like. No audio. So this is where I will kind of caveat, this is where there will be some nudity. So if it offends anybody, I don't think it's like completely nude or anything like that, but it's like some less desirable clothes that we just want to see on a Thursday morning. Everybody here familiar with skipthegames.com? Okay, so skipthegames.com, here's what happened. Backpage got shut down, right? The Texas Attorney General was like, we're taking a stand against Backpage. We're tired of Backpage. They're trafficking everybody. We know this is where all the trafficking is going on. We're shut it down. So Texas AG's office, working with the California AG's office, and I think ultimately DOJ, they issued search warrants on Backpage. They shut Backpage completely down because there was a ton of trafficking going on. They took over the Backpage servers, and they're like, we're going to use this. If anybody needs information or data from Backpage, just contact us. We're the federal government. We now own it. Do you think that's possible? To this day, it ain't, because the federal government does not streamline anything. But what happened was you had like small websites that were also engaging in trafficking and prostitution related offenses, one of which was Skip the Games. So I remember getting to work one like Tuesday morning and I go to pull up Backpage and it says owned by Department of Justice. And I'm like, well, Jesus, this is crazy. What do I do? So I go to Skip the Games. What happened is, to tell you a little bit about sex buyers and what kind of people they are, it flooded Skip the Games so much that their servers were not able to handle the amount of buyers that were now flipping to Skip the Games. So it bogged them down for like 4 weeks. You could hardly get on there until they had a little disclaimer that was like, we know it sucks right now. We're working on updating our servers in another country, thank God, because we know they're coming for us now. And I believe they went to Denmark and they did these big servers. So now it's one of the bigger ones. I guarantee if you go to Skip the Games and you type search, you type Dothan, Alabama, I know for a fact it's gonna pop up and you'll be like, oh, look. So there you go. So when we go to Skip the Games, we're gonna go through our escorts, we're gonna find them. And we're like, did she take this photograph up top? Nope. The next one, yeah. But we start getting a little nosy as to what we want to search. So Asia's back in town, ready to fulfill your fantasy or dream. Satisfaction's always guaranteed. No drama, no law enforcement, no bait and switch. If you're law enforcement, that's a contractual agreement. You do hereby solemnly swear that you are not law enforcement or any law enforcement agency affiliated and do not conduct sting operations in order to target human traffickers. It's legally binding in 49 states. Alabama, it's not legally binding. You're good. So Asia gives her phone number. Obviously, that was a big line of garbage. That's not true for those that are questioning me. It tells you what she does. So she will get into these different things, obviously the intercourse. Here's something that's important. We'll talk about it later. This is all coded, okay? I can't just be like, hi, I'd like to engage in full sexual intercourse with you for an hour. What is the fee? And she goes, well, it's going to be $100 in US currency, sir. And I'll be like, great. It doesn't work like that. So we'll talk into that a little bit later. Oh, look, her legal disclaimer. I am a professional service provider. Any fees or compensation paid to me for my time and companionship only. Whatever. So what we want to do, we want to capture Miss Asia's phone number. And we'll copy it. We'll dump over to our search tools. So for those that don't know, this is what Spotlight looks like. If you don't have it and you're in law enforcement, I highly encourage you to get it. You would be surprised, even on patrol, how many people, if you were to dump their phone number from the citation over to this, you'll come across. We routinely get called by patrol, thank God, because one thing about, and it very well may be the case out here, if a patrolman goes out today and finds a kilo of cocaine, they're like, oh man, great job, right? Woo! What are all the other patrolmen on his shift gonna do on the next shift? They're gonna be looking for a kilo of cocaine, right? Because homeboy ain't gonna get this like, thanks chief, without me getting it too. This works the same way with trafficking investigations. So if you have a patrolman that goes out and makes a traffic stop, he goes, man, 3 girls, stripper pole, tons of condoms, lingerie, and some dude driving. FBI calls that a clue. I'm not really sure what it is, but I need to call you at midnight, then I gotta get up and come in. They could just run the number from the citation or the warning, dump it into Spotlight, you'd really be shocked. So a lot of your interdiction guys, if you have dope interdiction, things like that, definitely worth looking into. But this is Spotlight, new and improved. Does facial recognition. I can dump somebody's face in there. I can take it off their Instagram if anybody in here wants to volunteer. We'll see if there's any similarly looking sex ads. But we can do numerous things. One of which is search. It's trying to default locate me. And we'll just pop in that phone number. So we have the 512, that's an Austin area code, and we'll search it. And this is running almost 120 million sex ads, just to put it in perspective, which they call that a metric ton. Okay, so we have our person, right? We have Miss Asia. We have 303 ads associated with that one profile. That tells us she's burning up the countryside. So we can come in here, we'll dig a little bit deeper. When we break it down, and this is starting to do analytics for us, but we can go through and find all of these. So what we do is we dump over to our track, and we're just gonna analyze some data. And our data is gonna be, I don't have a case number, let me, suspect ID. Both of these services are completely free. All you do is sign a really quick MOU, send it in, you're great. Track we've seen used in not only trafficking, but also liquor law violations, all kinds of stuff. So we'll check phone number. We can search all of those different things if I have your name, anything like that. So we'll search the phone number for those ads. We will run it. We're gonna check Bitcoin, we're gonna check MSBs, which are money service businesses. So we have 11 records from 2 sources. When we look at this, our primary sender is, and aside from this, if anybody's taking pictures, please don't. We have a person identified as Lindsay Solomon who is sending money to somebody. And when we look at who she's sending money to, we have a few different people. We have, the payees are a Patrick Nash, I don't know how to say this, Anderson, Patrick Nash, Mr. Anderson, some randos, one she received some money. Now, for sake of the fact that I've searched Patrick Nash, I found nothing on Patrick Nash. I've searched Savon Harlan, nothing on Savon Harlan. We're gonna dump into Mr. Anderson. So we now have sex ads from somebody that has, if we're going through the photos, we can show that there's more than one person traveling that are all female. So at least one of them's probably likely a bottom. And we search the phone numbers. We have sex ads with movement and money transfers with movement from the same locations as the sex ads. So today there's ads in Dothan and there's money sent from Dothan. Tomorrow there's ads in Montgomery and money from Montgomery. So what does that tell us? we're probably dealing with somebody who's sending money and getting money, right? Associated with sex ads. So we dump over to our handy Instagram, News 25 gal, she's really nice. Well, let's start with Facebook. So let's search him on Facebook and see if we come up with anybody. We didn't find any results. So if any woman in here has been cheated on by their spouse, would you just stop at Facebook or would you go to Insta? We're going Insta. So we're man. So we're gonna dump the name into Instagram and we're like, oh look, we have a couple, whatever the name is. So I'll just click the first one. This is where we kind of transition into our open source to start building out some of our cases based on nothing but intelligence. So stellar looking fella. He's very limited on here, doesn't have much. He's got, what, 5 photographs. Estacado High School. Looks like about it. So we've got this though, we've got his moniker. So let's take Kigi Mac and we can search that on Facebook and see. Kigi Mac comes up, good game, right? Is good game kind of a clue that he's probably involved in the game? I don't know which one, maybe dope, maybe trafficking, maybe both, who knows? The school that he goes to, is that important? He just confirmed to us who he is because he went to Estacado School and there he is, same guy. So we'll click on Kigi Mac and this is where we'll play a little bit. So Mr. Good Game, he goes by Mr. AOB. Does anybody know what AOB stands for? I didn't figure. It's arrogant, obnoxious bastard, is what it means. So would we like to think that most pimps are AOBs? I do. I think they're all, arrogant and obnoxious, and I really think there are other words than that, but we'll move on. So we want to stir him up a little bit. Where does he live? He says Miami. Is everything on that factually true? Probably not. Let's check out his about. Single, we've got photos, we'll dig through those. Friends, no friends to show. His friends are on lock. Videos tell a lot. We can document travel from these. We can turn around and say, look, you're, in this particular case, videoing going down the street. Do street signs matter? Of course, if I can go back and I can say, look, I think you're from Lubbock and you just passed US Highway 84 at this location, at least I know where you are. It doesn't necessarily prove you're engaging in trafficking at that point, but it proves a lot of our movement. So when we're able to find out some of these things, it can matter. Let's see here. He's got a grill. It's a pretty grill. We actually seized a grill from a dude one time. He's in federal prison. We took his teeth and we auctioned them. We'll take everything. Some videos with the cash. Nice little watch there. That's interesting. I've never seen this before. I haven't honestly dug through this part. But there's a woman on the street walking. That, again, the FBI could call that one a clue. Outside of a hotel. We know he likes weed. We know he likes cash. Let's look at his cash. Yeah, I'm not worried about audio. It's just I'm curious now. So here's one thing that is catches my eye. Is there anything about this that screams this guy may be a pimp? Who said? Yeah. What's on his necklace? You can't tell. It's a P. So a lot of times you'll see they'll have everything as a P or 16 because P is the 16th letter of the alphabet. So when you're on here and he's like, hey, it's me, I'm Kigi Mac, hashtag 16, or I'm Kigi Mac, hashtag P, he's basically advertising the fact that he's a pimp, right? So we've got the P on there, we've got all the cash. A lot of times we can start digging through who's liking this stuff. We can find Mercedes Alvarez here as an example. We can take Mercedes, we can cut out her face, we can dump it over in a spotlight, and then we can see, does she have any sex ads associated? And we can really start building out networks of organizational trafficking with a lot of these things. So For those that are scared of dogs, such as myself, we know we want to go with a dog snare and somebody who's not scared of dogs. We could go on all day on this, but let's move on to some check-ins and photos and things like that. So we'll go to more. Let's see if he's checked in anywhere. Nope, no places to show. More sports. No sports. Sometimes you can also help build out locations if everything you like are the Houston Astros, the Houston Rockets, and the Houston whatever soccer team they have. Probably a good chance they're from Houston. So we'll get off that. Let's go back to his photos. So we've got Mr. Good Game. We have photos here. Oh, he definitely likes his weed and his promethazine. I'm sure promethazine is a controlled substance here as it is with us. Is there anything about this photograph that's like, maybe he was in the Boy Scouts and they were doing a cookie drive or whatever it is Boy Scouts sell, and they got the popcorn money. I think Boy Scouts are popcorn, right? This is all the popcorn money they made. No, this is probably a pimp. Is there anything about this photograph that makes my day? He got a tag, so we're gonna run some tags. The other thing is too, there's a few things that we can do for those that don't know. So again, going back to technology-based investigations. I now have the tag. Not only does it say, hey, look, it's registered to Kiki Mac. It's not gonna say Kiki Mac, obviously. It's registered to Mr. Anderson. I can then search LPR. So I can search license plate readers, and I can find out every time your license plate has passed certain places. I can see where you've been. I can see where your car was parked at 3 o'clock in the morning the other night because it was parked outside Motel 6. So when we're searching all of these things, it really helps to build not only our evidence of movement, but also trafficking. Because if you say, hey, look, I know you guys got me, officer. I just met this girl. She asked for a ride to your apartment. Sorry, I can be like, no, she was posted up in Dothan, Alabama 2 days ago, and lo and behold, Dothan PD with their LPRs done tagged you at whatever motel in Dothan, Alabama, hopefully not the Hampton Inn. And at least not tonight anyway. So then we can even see, well, hey, he passed this location. They crossed on I-10 going through, New Orleans the next day, and we can start mapping all of this out. The other thing is the stickers. The stickers are significant to us, at least, because he's from Lubbock, Texas. The Estacado High School is Lubbock. Texas Tech University is in Lubbock, Texas as well. So going back to sports teams, that can even be significant for helping us out with those cases. Let's keep digging on him. So again, we've got our photograph. Look at the necklace. He's got that P. I never chase a bitch because my team chased cheddar. What is that saying? I ain't chasing you because my team, which is my stable of women, my team is more than one, is chasing cheddar. For those that don't know, it's not like a block of cheddar where you cut off a little bit. Cheddar is cash. So he's literally advertising on Facebook what they're doing. And that's a pretty decent wad of cash. Does anybody in here have a wad of cash like that? Okay. If so, I was going to rob you out in the parking lot. But we keep digging. We come back across our photo there. Chasing the money, next exit. Let's see. Another vehicle, another license plate. Lo and behold, there he is taking some money. I don't know many men that wear fingernail polish. It happens, I guess, but that tells us at least what's going on there a little bit. Let's keep digging. So, there he is again. Looks like probably a hotel, stacks of cash. There's a post about pimping. My haters, dope man, and pimping. Look, idiot. So this one was interesting. At least maybe we have 2 women. What do you say on that one? Definition of teamwork. We just talked about this is my team, right? I want to see if we can find, okay. That looks like 2 women handing somebody stacks of cash, like large stacks of cash. There was another photograph that was of interest I just saw. What's that? Anybody here prior FBI? They call that a clue. They even teach it in the FBI Academy. This is a clue. What's actually sad is some of these SOBs are over here laughing at it. And even women, that's disturbing. So let's dig a little bit deeper. There's more pictures of them. There's some cash money pictures. That one was dirty, so we're going to keep going. Another vehicle with a possible license plate. When your GPS says turn right onto 66 in Lubbock, Texas, you get your guns ready. That means he's definitely from Lubbock because he knows these things. For those that don't know sex ads, we're going to save this image. And we're going to, let's save it. Let's call it Dothan Demo. That's interesting to me. So we're going to save that photograph. Let's go back to Spotlight. You gotta be kidding me. So let's cut this picture out and see if we can hit on anything. So we'll go back to our ad searches, and where's this stupid thing? Oh, there it is. Let's dump this ad over into an image search, or that photograph rather. So it's searching that photo. Now we already have the picture of the unrelated girl to these 2. You remember the first one that we started with? So we had that one that started, which led us to him, and I'll be darned. So we can come here and we can start looking at more ads with more identified girls. And from that, we can even take the phone numbers over here. We can run those through track as well. We can say, hey, was the money movement going here? What's it doing? So just kind of an overview of open source intelligence and how it can really change. Well, okay, here's a good one. There we go back to the Kiki P. I mean, he's flat out advertising that he's a pimp. With this, I'm going to throw out, we can't just turn around and say, hey, let me print all this off, hand it to a prosecutor, and expect to prosecute. This better not say Waco. Okay, Mac. We can't just print it and say, hey, prosecutor, enter this into evidence, and we're just going to target this guy. That's not really how it works. But what does this do for me? It tells me that I probably need to cut a search warrant to Facebook.com/#KikiMac/ #P the wonderful or whatever his name is. And when we get that search warrant back, we're going to come with several things. We're going to ask for not only check-ins, we're going to get locations they've gone to, videos, photographs, likes, you name it. One of the most important ones is Messenger. So when we get into Yahoo's Messenger, and I say Yahoo not like Yahoo.com, like Yahoo like he's crazy, what's going to happen? I guarantee you're going to find, hey babe, you're pretty. Hey babe, you want to join team hoop-de-hoo, whoop-de-woo, whatever. Sex, you're going to find inevitably where they've either groomed and or sexually abused minor children. You're going to find where they've tried to get minor children to come to their location. Say he's talking to a kid in Waco and he's like, hey, I'm in Dothan. I want to send you a bus ticket. So I send you a Greyhound bus ticket. You hop on. What does Greyhound require to get on a bus? Can you get on a Greyhound bus without identification? No, you can't. You can't. If you have your boarding pass mailed to you or done on your phone. If you go to the front desk to purchase it, you have to have identification. But all you have to have there is that. Same thing for Amtrak. I just had a 16-year-old kid we intercepted off an Amtrak because it didn't require anything. Just boarding pass, get on. So just something to keep in mind. It definitely leads us into kind of where we're going next. Can we switch back to the other thing? I tell people I'm really bad at tech. I'm really good at talking dirty, but that's about it. And that's the truth, actually. My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. So before we kind of move any further, does anybody have any questions about open source intelligence or what we can use it for, what we can find with it? Just some like little things to consider. If they're posted all over Facebook and they've got photographs that they're taking, selfies in mirrors or whatever. Is there anything that we can draw from that that's of importance? We can really, for one, look for people in the background. That oftentimes will tell us stuff. Look at luggage. When we're on Spotlight, or Facebook, look for those things that are telltale signs that, hey, they're traveling the country. They're traveling whatever, areas they want. Who they keep tagging in photographs with. If I'm on Facebook, or say Jason, because I like everything Jason does. So if Jason's on his Facebook and it's like, Joe Scarramucci like this, Joe Scarramucci like this, Joe Scarramucci like this, and I'm commenting, haha, bro, great time in Dothan. We had amazing pork chops last night at whatever the place was. It was the greatest pork chop ever, actually. And then he posts on Instagram a picture of his pork chop, and I'm like, dude, that was the best pork chop ever. And he's like, cool, the martinis were great. And I was like, yeah. And we start having this interaction on multiple platforms that kind of lends credit to the fact that we may be around each other a lot. When he's like, hey, I got this pork chop. Those things are really overlooked. It's the little tiny things that we really need to slow down as investigators and do. And I say all this to say, we need to be doing all of this from our desk long before we ever even send a message saying, hey, I'd really like to talk to you. If we have high-speed criminal histories, right? We've all got criminal history searches, and I can get on there and I'm like, tell me about this guy. Google does that too a lot. And what I've found is that really quickly, instead of me having to call over to my analyst and be like, hey, can you run a criminal history on, Mr. Anderson here? And she's like, yeah, I'm stacked up, I'll get it in an hour. I can oftentimes Google Mr. Anderson, whatever it is, prostitution. And it'll pop up. Hey, he was arrested as part of a prostitution sting in New Orleans, Louisiana. These other people were arrested with him as part of this sting, and they were all part of this little group. And then we start cutting out those paces, putting them in these, and we're really even just building out a case using the Googles. We work a lot with an organization called Collective Liberty. They're an anti-trafficking organization. They do intelligence and training. But just as an example, I can send, this is a case that I worked, actually the one that we had earlier with Octarius Allen. I just was able to send it off and be like, here's the phone number I have for these ads. Can you build me out a case? And, I'm really busy right now. I'm sipping coffee, talking to the chief deputy about chief deputy things and apologizing for my behavior yesterday, which happens a lot, actually. I think I was talking to one of the gentlemen here in law enforcement. It depends on what badge I wear. If I'm really going to do something that's going to piss everybody off, I put on my HSI badge. If it's going to be really good for the sheriff's office, I'm like, oh, I'm a deputy. But we can send this information off and we can say, hey, look, what can you tell me? And they'll turn around and send us out this network of a trafficking organization. And this entire network is quite literally doing nothing but open source intelligence. So I know it's really hard to see, but we can start with a couple names. It's going to lead us to, hey, this name is associated with this number has money sent to this person has an arrest for that, and we start tying it all in together. And it's not just this simple, but they send us an entire report based on that. So when we are looking at our follow-up investigation, or even a lot of times, say I get on here and for the law enforcement and prosecutors, tell me how it works here, because we travel all over the country and it works different in different places. If I pull an ad today and my ad is in Montgomery, Alabama, but yesterday you were posted in Dothan, and we can intercept you in Montgomery, will Dothan also have jurisdiction for the promotion of the prostitution if we can show that they came through here? Yeah? We're the same way. So if today you're in Killeen and I found that yesterday you had been in McLennan County, you'd been in Waco, I can say, hey, look, they probably went down here. I can work up all of this stuff, get it all done long before we send a text message. It could be over the course of like 3 days, 4 days. And say I build out my case and I send a subpoena. In this case, it's Skip the Games. They don't require a subpoena. They're like, Skip the Games is actually pretty amazing. So their website says, we believe that, our CEO believes that consensual sexual intercourse for money is completely okay. We don't believe that, prostitution should be legalized or should be criminalized. We do, however, hate human traffickers, and our CEO believes that human traffickers should be shot on sight. It literally says this on their website. I don't think they believe that. I think the thing is they just say that way they can be like, no, like, we are anti-trafficking. If the feds ever come knocking, like, we would not accept this. Send an email to abuse@skipthegames.com. Hey, I want to know everything about that ad that I had earlier. They're going to go, hey, we have a lot of information and we believe traffickers should be shot on sight. So since you said this is a trafficking investigation, go forth. Here's everything you need right now, including phone numbers, email addresses, IP addresses that they logged in to create these, every IP address they've ever used to do anything with these ads. All of it is going to come to you. So looking at our initial investigation and going back to what we just talked about, our initial investigation into human trafficking, and we're here because we want to do trafficking related work, not prostitution related work. Again, one is consensual, arguably. I don't go for it, but we'll say it is. One is not. We want to build our cases before we ever say, hey babe, how's it going? Hey pretty lady, or whatever nonsensical stuff we come up with to get our little bait into our website. We want to look at banking information. Is anybody in law enforcement here familiar with Fenson? You would be very surprised, obviously, how many people are not big on Fenson or know anything about Fenson. So here's how Fenson works. Fenson is actually run through the Treasury Department. We're not supposed to talk about it, so we're not going to talk about it. Let's pretend like this conversation didn't happen. So you have certain things that happen within the Treasury Department and your local bank. I don't know if you guys know this, but every bank has a BSA rep. Every bank has a Bank Secrecy Act rep. And what they're doing is they say that, what is your name? What is it? Kendall is a student, right? And she opened a bank account today at the First National Bank of Dothan. Do y'all have one? Is that a thing here? Okay, so First National Bank of Dothan. And she listed her employment as she's a student. And Kendall keeps coming in every week with a stack of $8,000 cash. As a student, Kendall, would you just normally walk in with your listed employment as being a student with $8K cash money? And if so, I'm moving to Alabama and going to college. No. So hey, this is suspicious to us. So they generate a suspicious activity report. And they say, hey, look, we don't know anything about Kendall. We know that she's listed as a student. Her money is not matching her employment. So you could say, I'm a cook at a local Mexican restaurant. And I bring that because I've got it going right now. And that cook is like 4 days a week depositing $9,500 cash money. Is a cook at a Mexican restaurant making that kind of money? Absolutely not. So they say, hey, Fenson, we have a problem. We don't know what it is, but here you go. And what happens is that's called a suspicious activity report. That just sits in SAR land for an undetermined amount of time in this mythical little place that nobody actually knows where it is. Until I come across Kendall, and now as law enforcement, I got questions. We're not gonna say Kendall because she's a student, but we'll say this person. So this person's listed as a student, they're putting this money in. Now I'm like, hey, Fenson, I got this case, it's a trafficking case. Tell me any suspicious activity reports you have. That's when it matters because they're gonna go, boom, oh, here's our registry. This is what we have on that person, and we're seeing all this basically illicit funds, things that we believe are illicit, things that we believe are money laundering, all of that, and you get your report back. So we do that on the front end. We do it based on the phone numbers we have. When we're able to identify Mr. Ukadarian Anderson, or whatever you pronounce it, I'm like, hey, Fenson, I want to know what's going on with this guy. He keeps depositing $9,500. Why is he doing that? Because he's trying to stay below the $10,000 threshold of reporting. So we can already start looking at it and saying we have a problem. Our transportation history. Most people don't know this. Legal@greyhound.com. I want to know every time Jason Lundquist has been on a Greyhound bus. And they're going to send it to me in an email form that just says, here you go. He's been on a bus from Dothan, Alabama to Waco, Texas, if he misses his flight. He was on a bus from Waco to San Antonio. And we're going to get all that movement long before we ever have to worry about anything. Hotels. Anybody ever send a subpoena or a search warrant to Priceline.com? I will tell you something about Priceline.com. They have a dude named Rocky that does all of their stuff. If you ask Rocky for his address and you're in law enforcement, please pay attention to this. Send that fool a coin and a patch, and you will have everything you've ever wanted. He will tell you, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I'm going to put it in an email. I hope it sticks. And you're like, thanks, Rocky. He's like the best paid snitch because it only requires like $1 patch and a $5 coin. Why does all of that matter? Why would we want all of that on the front end before we ever say, hey, how's it going on a text? It's going to be what Jason's about to come in here and talk about. Anybody know? Looking ahead? I booked my hotel on my Hilton app. I booked my flights on my American Airlines app. When I get to my Hilton, as I did with the one here, I go on here, I check in the day before. So I'm already actually checked into the hotel in Montgomery for tonight. And I already said, look at that, checkout's available for my Hilton here today. So we're gonna check out, by the way. I'm gonna say, hey, I want my key on my phone, because it's Bluetooth, right? So I can show up to the hotel. Now with COVID, front door, gotta hit your button. So it's Bluetooth and lets me in the front door. I go straight to my room. I don't even see anybody at the front desk. I go straight to my room, I'm in. Everything I do is right here. Why does that matter? Because when Mr. Ukadarian Anderson shows up with Miss, whatever her name was, Asia, I think she had, and he says, look, I just met her. She asked for a ride. My favorite one is this. Look, dude, I'm a rapper and I'm on tour. And I'm like, really? Where's the rest of your tour bus? I just met her in Killeen. She asked for a ride. I'm passing through. I'm tired, so I was gonna drop her off. We already know that's BS, right? We already know based on all the movement that all of this and all of the travel and all of the money, that you're full of it. So do I have to then say, hey, Miss Asia, I really want you to talk to me about your trafficking and tell me all about it, and then let her sit here and blow smoke up us? If she says, man, I just met this guy. No, you didn't. You guys were at the Hilton, right? You guys were here, you were there, you were doing this, you were doing those things. It does a couple of things. You have like 2 days that you've been looking at them, but holy Jesus, if I sat down with you right now and said, look, I know that you're saying you were just at the Motel 6, and that may be the case. You just came from Killeen. Tell me about Albuquerque. What did you think about Albuquerque last week? Okay. Hey, before that, you were in Denver. Tell me about Denver. What did you like there? I went and saw some really cool things in Denver. what did you like? And they're like, then you're like, what about LA? You guys were out in LA, right? It was cool. Then their minds are going, holy shit, this guy knows everything, right? No, seriously. And they go, how long have you been watching us? A while. It's like 2 days, right? But it's just those little things that we can do that really, show them, hey, I'm not some, and I use the term loosely, I'm not some vice cop who just texted some random number and hoped you showed up ready to talk all about your victimization. I've done my homework, and it does a couple of other things. It tells us what? As an investigator, what does that tell me about her? She's likely, without any doubt in our mind, does anybody doubt that Asia on there is probably a trafficking victim? No. So it goes back to our bias. When we look at her and she says, I'm not participating, y'all know the things they say. Should I be looking at her going, she's nothing but a hook and put her in jail? No, because we're so far ahead of the game. So it's really taking the time to address all this and investigate it properly, and using technology to really further our investigations. So when they get there, we're going to take that device and it's going to go to Jason Lundquist, MCJ, so that he can do. I'm Joseph Scarramucci, NDD, no damn diploma, but it's going to go to him, and this is where he's going to really talk about like what we can do to further the investigations after we've taken the cell devices and the computers and all the electronics that we have. And on that note, it's you.
Y'all see what I got to put up with? I got to figure out where we're at here. So, do you guys, just to give me some perspective where we're at, what's your access like to a computer forensic lab? Do you have one? You do? Huh? You do have one? Okay. And you guys use what, Celebrite? Okay. All right, cool. So that answers a lot of questions. Do you routinely write search warrants for internet service providers? Okay. All right. So y'all are ahead of the game. So a lot of people don't. And like Joe talked about, we see a lot of folks that they'll go out and they'll do all this OSINT and they'll gather all of this intelligence. But the problem is, it's one thing to know it, and it's another thing, like from your prosecutor's perspective, to be able to do anything with it. And so you have to authenticate stuff to do stuff with it. But also in the process of authentication, which is usually going to involve legal process, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn a whole lot, more stuff than you ever imagined, and you're probably going to uncover additional offenses. And just to piggyback on what Joe said too, knowing your stuff and having all this information also shows your competence. And I don't ever like to think of myself as competent. I kind of think of myself as an idiot most of the time. But I want my victims, I want my non-offending caregivers, I want the people that are coming to me or that I'm trying to elicit their help from to believe that I know what I'm doing. And your OSINT and your digital evidence is going to do that, so it's really beneficial in your victim mentality as well. We're going to talk about some legal process, and so I just want to preface this by saying I am not an attorney. I want to be able to say this real fast like they do in the commercials, but nothing here constitutes legal advice, blah, 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 blah. But I'm not an attorney. We're obviously not in Texas. The stuff that works for me may not work for you, okay? Your prosecutor may want something done a different way. So consult with them before you, don't just go out and be like, well, Lundquist and Scarramucci said we could do this. Like talk to your prosecutors before you do that. Talk to your legal advisors before you do that. This man is an attorney. Does anybody know who he is? Gosh, now the Alzheimer's has set in with me. What's his name? Gosh, I can't remember now. This is awful. He's a defense attorney, and he does the best YouTube commercials on the planet. I'll think of it here. pretty soon. Anyway, so consult your legal counsel. Okay, so where are we at? So you're probably going to get a digital device. There's no doubt you're going to get a digital device. Everybody on the planet has at least one of these, and nobody goes anywhere without it. Does anybody in this room have an old flip phone? Awesome. There's usually... I teach a whole class on digital evidence, and there's usually, like, I'll talk about everybody's got one of these little tracking devices that we carry with us, and there's always some old dude in the back who's like, not me! But everybody's got one. And the fact of the matter, is there anybody in this room that doesn't have a Google or an iCloud account? Raise your hand. Do you have what type of phone do you have? Is it an Android or an Apple? You have a Google account. Okay, so that's one thing that people have to realize too, is that everybody, if you have an iPhone or you have an Android phone, you have a Google account or you have an Apple account, and a lot of people don't know that, but those accounts are going to be treasure troves of information, so you want to try and work your way back to that. I'm sorry, so for the cell phones, hold on, I jumped ahead of myself. They are little boxes though, right? They're encrypted boxes, and so you've got to get into them. Everybody talks about, oh, Cellebrite came out with a new program where we can break into something without somebody's passcode. Is that cheap? No, it's expensive. So save yourself money and time and frustration. Most important thing to do is to get the passcode. And I can't tell you how many people forget this. And if you can push this out to your patrol folks, this will save everybody a heck of a time. It's just you have to get the passcode. So just ask people. I'm always amazed as a detective that I will cold call people on the phone and I will ask them their blood type, the name of their firstborn, and their social security number, and they'll give it to me before they go, hey, who is this? You know? So there's nothing wrong. If you think you're going to need a device, whether it be a victim or a suspect or whatever, ask for the passcode. Ask for the passcode before you tell them that you're going to take that device, okay? Ask for it and write it down. If they have, a lot of the newer stuff has biometric stuff where it's a fingerprint or a facial recognition. While you've got that person there, just have them unlock it and ask them to take it off. Okay, and worst case scenario, even if you're taking it in an exigency, you know, if you see them unlock it, that's when you grab it. And then you take it off. So you can be sneaky. You might have to get a search warrant later.
Can I add something to that real quick?
Yeah.
A lot of times what we do and it's worked is I'll have my suspect in handcuffs. Like, who you want to call, bro? Like, you got to call somebody to know you're, going to jail. They're like, hey, I want to call mom. It's always mom, right? You're like, okay, look, I'll let you do that. If this phone is evidence and you're in handcuffs, you just tell me the password, we put it in, show me where mom is, we'll call. And you're like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure you write that down. The other one that we like to do a lot is just set the phone and say, look, you can't do anything with it because that phone is evidence, but I will allow you to put that password in. It just needs to sit right here. And when they go, I'm sitting there going, right away. Just something to keep in mind. Another one on facial recognition I like to do is waterboard them and hold the phone at their face. Okay, the opposite.
Just keep in mind that, how you get the passcode for this stuff is as creative as you want to be, but you're probably going to need to get a search warrant for it later. Okay, don't neglect that step. And then write it down. Your computer forensic lab will be real happy with that. Another thing that you have to do is you have to disconnect the device from any sort of network connectivity. Now, you can't take the battery out of most phones anymore. That was the easy way to do it. You just pull the battery on it. So now you have to Faraday it. A lot of people say put it in airplane mode. If I've got somebody who's cooperative, I will have them in front of me. Hey, would you go ahead and put your phone in airplane mode? That doesn't completely disconnect it, though. It can still connect through Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So you really want to shut it down. In my department, they issue us these Faraday bags that we can use. But the best thing is aluminum foil. Just carry a roll of aluminum foil with you, and experiment with it though too. Like an iPhone 6, we've had to wrap in 4 sheets of aluminum foil before it'll not get a signal. So if you want to experiment with that, just take a phone and call it, and if it rings, it's getting signal. Wrap it in aluminum foil. If it still rings, it's getting signal. And just see how many times you have to wrap it. These newer ones, it's crazy. I mean, you really do have to wrap them quite a bit to disconnect them from the network. So aluminum foil is the best way to do that. But the other thing we have to think about is, how many of us get hung up on, oh man, they won't give me the passcode, or oh man, I don't have their device, so we're just never going to get it, right? Do we think, well, we're done with that? Well, the reality of it is, remember when you used to buy the little SD cards and you'd put in your phone, and like if you're like me, you go out and you take pictures and video, and then they fill up, and so you just go get a new SD card and you put it in your phone? Well, you can't do that anymore with most phones. Why is that? Because they're not keeping the data on this device, okay? It's going somewhere else. It's being kept in the cloud. These are just kind of accessing devices to get to all these different services. So the information that you want is probably somewhere else, and if it's probably somewhere else, you can get it with legal process. You don't need all the expensive Celebrite. You don't need to break somebody's finger off and put it on the pad sensor, you know? So you just need to be able to write some legal process, but you got to know where to go get it. Different ISPs, internet service providers, have different retention periods. I'll tell you that if you have Facebook or Instagram, they keep everything you send them forever. And ever and ever. It just blows my mind. And they collect so much stuff. All these ISPs collect stuff that you don't even know that they're collecting. Some keep it, on their servers. Some keep some on their servers, some on the user's device, but most more often now are keeping it on their servers. But you got to ask yourself, like, what could they have? Is anybody in here familiar with a Geofence Warrant? Have you ever written a Geofence Warrant? Yes? You guys are? Are you guys familiar with the Geofence Warrant? Okay, so Geofence Warrant, we had the Austin bomber, the guy that was blowing up stuff in Austin a while back. ATF caught him through a Geofence Warrant, and that's a great example to explain what that is. You can write a warrant, you can say to Google or Apple, hey, I've had offenses in multiple locations, and I know the date and time of the offenses, but I don't know anything else. And so you write your you go onto a map, basically, and you say, I want to know all the devices that were in these locations at those dates and times, and then they will return to you device IDs, but not specific identifiers, and then it's up to you to go back and say, okay, wait a second, this device was in all of those locations at the times that the offenses occurred, and then you write a search warrant for that device, and they'll return specific identifiable data. And so that's how they got the Austin bomber. But I mean, I know guys in our department, the burglary guys, write Geofence warrants all the time. So it's an amazing tool when you think about it. You can basically go from nothing and have something real quick. You just got to know how to write the warrant. Think about what's on them. I'm Android. My wife is Apple. We haven't really had any fights about it yet, but it's coming. But everybody's either Android or Apple. And so, like, if you're an Android folk, go home and go onto a computer and go to google.com/dashboard and log into your Google account, and it'll show you what they have of yours. And it's amazing. This is my dashboard from years ago before I really started drinking the Google Kool-Aid. And they've got 3,000 email conversations and 400 files on my drive. And another thing too is if you get into like somebody's dashboard or Google, it's going to show you app data. What's app data going to tell you? It's going to tell you the other places that you can go look. So like Joe talks about, if somebody's got Snapchat and Priceline and the Western Union app on their phone, these are clues as to where to go look for stuff and where you can send other legal process. Anyway, I talk in my digital evidence class about just think about outside the box, right? Like I can't see the Echo Dot being a big issue. I don't think many pimps are driving around with it in their car, but they might be driving around with fitness trackers or smartwatches or wearable tech, and so that's stuff that might have information on it that could lead you stuff. But you've got to be able to ask the right questions so that you can get the right legal process. And one of them is, that you have to identify where you're going to go look for it and what account you're going to go look for. Now, these are real lines that I've heard in reports, and these are real faces that I've made in response to them, right? The victim's mother told me that she communicated with the suspect over the internet. Okay. Well, I've tried to subpoena Al Gore. He won't come. So you got to know where on the internet to go. Or I hate these, I see these a lot, where the suspect communicated with the victim through text messages with an app such as Facebook. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm older. I don't think there's a person on this planet that's under 30 that actually uses text messages anymore. right? Everybody uses some sort of app. They're either sending direct message through Instagram, or they're using WhatsApp, or they're whatever, Snapchat. Nobody uses text messages except old fogies like me. So if you're working a case, ask these questions. How are you communicating is usually the one that I ask of everybody. How do you communicate with this person? Forensic interviewers, people that deal with kids a lot. This is a super question to add into your interviews. But also, who thinks that kids don't use Facebook? And I get this a lot. Facebook is for old people. I've had my daughter tell me that, Dad, I'm not using Facebook. I had to twist her arm because she's like, Dad, Facebook's for old people. Well, kids don't use Facebook the way us old people use Facebook, but kids use Messenger. So many people use Messenger. And Messenger is, I think, the #1 messaging app right now, and it has been for a while. There are almost 3 billion active Facebook accounts, and a lot of that is because of Messenger usage. So Messenger, Facebook is going to have a lot of information because so many people use just the messaging app. Things to remember when you write your search warrants. This is all a Fourth Amendment issue, and Fourth Amendment issues are kind of broad and complex. And what it comes down to is some federal statutes, the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, the Stored Communications Act. Those are both now almost 40 years old. But recently, you've got the Cloud Act, the Clarifying Lawful Overseas Use of Data Act. That's from 2018. But it's a variety of federal statutes. I like reading federal statutes. I think they're way easier to read than state statutes. I don't know how it is in Alabama. But if you're interested, go read 18 U.S.C. 2702 through 2711. And that's basically what you're going to write your legal process on, whether it be Alabama or Texas. So just remember that privacy issues regarding digital evidence are really new and they're evolving. Bad casework generates bad case law. I see this a lot where people they'll write legal process or they'll see stuff and then they won't write legal process. And I think that's how we end up down the road with things that are going to prevent us from getting the stuff that we need. So I'm going to give you some resources on how to do like best practices legal process here. They're technically not supposed to give you the stuff that they're giving you, but that doesn't impact your investigation at all. And then there are questions about like compelling a password. Some places will consider that a Fifth Amendment violation, others won't. I know that I can get a court order, I can get a court order for somebody to put their finger on the pad sensor to unlock it with their biometrics. I don't know if I can get a court order. You can get a court order now to hold it in front of their face. So, these are all things, when I say talk to your attorneys about it, talk to your attorneys about it. But yeah, Fourth Amendment challenges. Remember, Fourth Amendment is search and seizure, so it's broad and complex. The Electronic Communications Privacy Act is pretty broad and outdated. I'm not talking about surveillance here. And so it all comes down to just get a warrant, right? Warrants are words on paper. A lot of people get intimidated because, especially with electronic warrants, there are a lot of words. But come on, we're cops. I mean, everybody shares our boilerplates, and you can get a template warrant. Just tweak it, tune it up, make sure it works for you. But just get a warrant. Warrants are not a big deal. But to get a warrant, you've got these 3 steps to do it, right? You've got to identify the account. Now, this varies by the different internet service provider. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to do it for every one. You just need to figure out how to identify the account. If you've written search warrants for Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you've got an idea of what you've got to do. So just go out and identify the account. This is important, though, for our service providers who aren't law enforcement, in that when you have a kid come to you and tell you, hey, I met the dude that did this to me on Insta, and okay, I don't know whether we do it in ours where they'll bring a phone into the interview and say, okay, show me who that is. And that way you can know what you're looking for, or counselors, or any other service provider. If somebody identifies this stuff, you should know the questions. Work with your law enforcement to know the questions that they're gonna need to get the information later. And then you want to preserve the information through a preservation letter. which is basically just a letter that you're going to send to the internet service provider saying, hey, I think you have information on your servers that's relevant to a criminal investigation that I'm doing. I ask that you don't delete it, and those are good for 90 days, and you can renew it for another 90 days, so up to 180 days. Anybody not have experience with preservation letters in law enforcement? Is that something we should talk about? Okay, it doesn't have to be anything specific like Facebook and Instagram. They do it through their online portal. It's literally just you log in and click a box. You don't actually have to send a letter, but in reality, it can be nothing more than a letter. I think I have some examples. And then seizure, your seizure is going to be through your legal process, through your search warrant, through, in some cases, your subpoena or your court order. And then you're also going to want to submit a non-disclosure order. Every time I speak to people and they say, well, I have problems. I can't get stuff back from Snapchat. I can't get stuff back from Instagram. It usually comes down to your non-disclosure order. You used to be able to write that stuff into your warrants, but now all the ISPs, they want a separate non-disclosure order. Has anybody run into that hurdle? Are you submitting non-disclosure orders with your legal process? Are you submitting them with your preservation requests? You are? Prosecutors, what do you think? Are you telling folks to submit non-disclosures with preservation? You don't need to do it with the preservation. I've run into a lot of people that say, our prosecutor says we have to do a non-disclosure on preservation. So whether you do or you don't, I don't think it matters. But the non-disclosure order prevents the ISP from notifying your target that you're getting their information, and so we don't want that. I'm sorry, this is dry. We'll move. Anyway, there's 3 types of data that they're going to have. They're going to have BSI, basic subscriber information. It's going to be dates of service, IP addresses, which is real helpful, which is what Joe talked about. You know, if you come back and you find out that somebody's registered their account at the IP address at the Motel 6 that you just found them at, and they said they just gave somebody a ride there and they've never been there before, like, again, that's a clue. So BSI can be really helpful. Then you got your transactional data and then your content data, which is what you want. It's everything. Just get your search warrant. That's the bottom line of this stuff. Preservation letter, this is just an example to Backpage, which we don't have to worry about anymore. But literally, it's just a letter saying, hey, I have identified this particular account on your server. I think it's got information. Don't destroy it. If you need a copy of a preservation letter, let me know. But there's lots of templates out there. Search warrant, it's the same for a house, it's the same for a car, it's the same for somebody's Instagram account, right? Has to allege a specific offense. It doesn't have to allege the offense, though, and that's a big thing to remember. Joe and I were talking about this the other day on a case that we're working in. It's like, man, what can we use as probable cause for our legal process? It doesn't have to be human trafficking, sexual assault, whatever. I mean, it could be, I've written search warrants on C misdemeanors, which is the lowest level offense. It's a ticket in Texas. So I've written search warrants for that ended up being major sexual assault or trafficking cases, but you just got to allege an offense. And so again, this goes back to our other support, our other disciplines, our other support services, like help us with that. You know, ask those questions. Let's see. We're just going to run through this. Avoid the any and all language. You don't see that a whole lot anymore, but when I first started doing this stuff, it was all your search warrants. What do you want? I want any and all of everything that you have. Well, courts are overturning that stuff. Judges are actually starting to deny it, saying that's too vague. You've got to ask for specifics. A lot of people say, well, where do I get the specifics? This is some new internet service provider. I don't know what they might have. Whenever you sign up for something and you know where it says, read through all these 300 pages of terms of service and click agree, and that nobody ever reads, like I guarantee you in all of those, there's going to be a section that says information we collect about you. Just copy, cut, and paste that into your warrant. If they collect it, that's what you want. We talked about a non-disclosure order, so I'm going to jump through that. But again, it's just, some people have specific non-disclosure orders. It's really nothing specific. This is the one I use. I submit it with my search warrants, and the judge signs it, and it basically says, "Dear Internet Service Provider, don't tell Dilly Dip Dick Dizzy Whizzle that we're going to get his stuff." So that's good. Okay, where do you go to find this stuff, though? That's the most important, because we're going to talk about Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all that stuff. But every once in a while, you're going to have something come along and go, man, I've never heard of that before. Has anybody in here ever heard of MocoSpace? MocoSpace is a social network. I didn't know this. Moco in Spanish also. Does anybody speak Spanish in here? What does Moco mean? It's a booger. Anyway, Moco Space is a social network, and we had a case that involved it. And I'm like, I don't know anything about Moco Space. So where do you go? Well, the best place to go is Google. Just Google whatever that platform or app or service is for law enforcement, and a lot of them will have a portal or a guide or whatever. But search.org, are you guys using search.org? Are you familiar with this resource? Search.org is everything you need to know about the internet, in my opinion. But they have, under their resources tab up here on the top, they have an ISP list, and it has a drop-down menu. And I mean, it has everything, every phone company, credit card company, banking institution, social media service, just everything you could possibly think of that's an internet service provider. And it's going to have their email, their phone number, a law enforcement portal, but most importantly, their custodian of record and their address, and that's who you're going to address your legal process to. So like in this case with Moco Space, you know, it's got all that information there. So search.org is the place to go. Use their guides and their portals. They're all super helpful. I mean, these are businesses ultimately, and so they're going to help you do your job because it's going to make theirs easier and they're going to save money. Like I said, Facebook, this is just a screenshot of my law enforcement portal on there. Facebook's awesome. They do everything through the portal, and so I can do things from the field with Facebook, Instagram, but I would totally recommend, like, get yourself a toolkit and a laptop, and if you're out there doing your investigations, if you're doing a sting operation like Joe's going to talk about this afternoon, you know, bring your toolkit, and when I say toolkit, I mean like your PDF files and stuff with you, so that you can do all this stuff from the field. Because like preservation doesn't help you very much if you go grab somebody and you may or may not detain them or arrest them, and then you're going to go back to the office later to do your preservation on the computer, and by that time they've pulled out their phone and they've deleted stuff. So you want to do your preservation immediately. Don't use a fax machine. I don't know why when I speak people are still like, well, I don't know where I send a fax to. And I had a law enforcement representative from Facebook one time at a training. She said, hey y'all, we're Facebook. Like, we don't use a fax machine. I really think that only cops and doctors use faxes anymore. Does anybody disagree with that? Is there anybody else that uses a fax machine? I don't know why we do. I want to get rid of the one in my office so bad, but every once in a while, like, well, CPS, you DFPS folks too, you guys use faxes because it drives me nuts. They'll be like, we want to send you a referral. Okay, email it. Nah, we're going to fax it. So have that tool bag with you. You know, Joe's talked about some of it. Other than the roll of aluminum foil, you know, have this stuff with you. I've got all this stuff right now. Have charger cables, and have charger cables for everything. I hate iPhones. I hate Apple stuff. I don't use it, but I got a charger for it. And I don't have the old charger anymore, which I regret, but I've got the lightning cable. But have every different type of USB cord. Have, you know, little wall pucks that you can plug in, because if you've been a cop for a whole minute, you know this is absolutely the truth. If somebody walked into your office and said, I have the GPS coordinates to the Lindbergh baby on my phone, that phone would be dead, right? Everybody's phone is dead when it has the information that you need on it. So have the ability to charge it. Have a camera. You know, I like to take a little video camera with me outside of my body camera so that I can, like, video screenshots if I need to. I don't advocate for screenshots for anything, but if you need to identify an account, you know, you can take a picture of it, or passcodes and stuff like that. Like I said, we talked about having a laptop computer with some sort of internet access that you can hotspot from. You know, thumb drives with all your legal process on them. Digital copies of your legal process. I like to use like Dropbox or Google Drive. That way I have it with me no matter where I am, whether I have my computer or not. All your forms and stuff that you're going to need, bring that stuff with you, and not just in the trunk of your car. So common pitfalls, I see this a lot. Don't get frustrated, right? These tech companies are run by 20-somethings who are millionaires, and they could care less about Dothan, Alabama PD or Waco PD, right? They know I'm not going to come out there to California and kick down their doors, so they laugh. You know, do what they want, do it their way, use their preferred method of communication. I say specify how you want your return in your search warrant, and I do that with a $ for a reason. The federal statute allows these internet service providers to recoup costs for response to your legal process. Most of them won't do it in child exploitation or human trafficking, which is really good, but you do have to think if they do. The largest return I ever got back was 45,000 pages in a PDF file. If I had said in my warrant that I want that on 8.5 by 11 glossy paper, that's what they would have sent, and there would have been a bill on top. So usually everything now is it comes through a downloadable form, but consider the cost of it. Sometimes Google will send you stuff. I haven't had this happen in a while, but sometimes Google will send you stuff on a jump drive. So just ask them to archive it onto a common file format and send it to you on a disk is basically what you're asking. But ask the questions. I say check, double check again, and develop reasonable context. So when I first started writing Facebook search warrants, like I came into this and people were like, oh, we can't get stuff from Facebook or Snapchat. And I was like, oh yeah, we can't get stuff from Facebook or Snapchat. And then one day I was like, dang it, I want to get stuff from Facebook or Snapchat. And I did it, and I got stuff back, and I said, ooh, that worked. And then I thought I knew what I was doing, and I wrote a Facebook search warrant, 2 or 3 times down the road, and I sent it off, and they kicked it back, and they said, nope. And they didn't say why, and it made me so mad. But I went back, and I dotted my I's, I crossed my T's, and I said, oh, this is what I did wrong. And I sent it, and they said, try again. And they didn't tell me why. And I'm a policeman, right? Like, we're cops. We don't take too well to that stuff. I was about to go out there to California and be like, listen here, I'm going to kick down your door, Facebook, but I can't do that. So I didn't know what I was doing wrong, and I swore they were there laughing at me. But I had a friend that I went to high school with who went to college with a guy who was in the New Jersey State Police who left that to go work on Mark Zuckerberg's personal protective detail. And I reached out, and he put me in touch with a guy that was on Facebook's law enforcement response team. And I ended up calling him, and he said, well, just send me your warrant, and I'll look at it. And I sent it, and he called me back the next day, and he said, hey, you're sending it as a TIFF file format, which is what our scanner was set up to scan the documents in as a TIF file. And I was like, yeah? He said, yeah, we only take PDFs. And I lost hair over that, for crying out loud. And it was just because that was what they wanted. And so, having that contact to be able to ask that was very helpful. So if you ever have direct contact with somebody at an internet service provider, keep that. Like Joe says, send them a challenge coin and a patch. Develop that relationship, because it's going to help you in the long term. So certain stuff is outside the United States, and you might not be able to get stuff back from them. I've heard that people are getting stuff back from non-domestic accounts since the Cloud Act, but I don't know. Have you ever had any experience with that? Has it worked?
Yeah, we've used MLATs, but the problem with an MLAT is it just takes
forever.
Because it has to go through federal agencies, which then go with the agencies that they partner with in that given country, and it is slow.
All right, so real quick to go back, this is part of a longer presentation, so we don't have to do so much review, but there's 3 types of data, right? There's the basic subscriber information, there's transactional data, which you're not really going to worry about that. That might apply to the financial stuff that Joe's talking about. And then there's the content data. And to get that, you have to identify the account, you have to preserve it, and then you want to seize it through a search warrant. Like we talked about, those secondary warrants are to be expected. So, what you want to do is write your search warrant for Facebook or Snapchat and get an email address or an IP address that leads you back to Google or Apple, because the amount of information that Google or Apple has is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. I think unless you voluntarily turn it off on an Android device, your Android device reports its location back to Google about every 5 minutes, and Google keeps that information on their servers. Think about how valuable that stuff is. The ambient recordings. I've gotten Facebook search warrants where Facebook has recorded ambient noise. Not only recorded it, but sent it back to their servers and kept it on their servers. I'll tell you a funny story if we have time when we get done. So digital officer safety real quick. You go run your search warrant on somebody's house. You ever see these things, right? You got the Ring doorbell, the wireless security cameras, or the Nest thermostat. What we've kind of worked into the way we run search warrants now is after we kick the door and make sure there's no bad guys or big scary dogs in there, then we go to the router and we just pull all the wires out of it. because I want to deny access to these devices to the internet, because I don't want somebody seeing what I'm doing when I'm executing a search warrant on their house, but I also work in Texas, and I sure as heck don't want them turning up the heat on me, you know? Because that's the first thing you do on a search warrant. Like, you go find the air conditioner, you turn that sucker down. It's like taking a shower at a hotel, right? I'm not paying for it. Another really helpful tool that I use a lot, that I always like to talk about is Big Knox. Knox, you get it at bigknox.com. Knox is an Android terminal emulator. And so what a terminal emulator does is it allows you to run an Android platform on a computer. And so that's super helpful. Joe and I have played with this. We haven't done it in a while. But you know, if you're doing UC work, let me just preface this too by saying, please, it makes me cringe when I see people on their personal device or their personal account do case research, right? Don't do that. That is so, especially the advocates and the interviewers. Please don't do that, because these internet social media companies, they are analytics companies that collect data. And so by researching somebody, it's going to assume that like the people you know and the people they know may know each other. And so the guy, what was the guy that you were just showing? G Daddy Mac or whatever? Who? Kiki Mac. So you don't want your victim to come in and be like, oh, let me find out about Kiki Mac, and you do this all on your personal account, your personal device, and then all of a sudden your kids are getting suggested friends for Kiki Mac. You know, don't do that. Use a dedicated device and use a dedicated bank account. And one of the ways you can do that is through an Android terminal emulator, because you can run basically a mobile platform on your computer. You don't have to have a dedicated device. We talked about OSINT work, but this is a great website, osintframework.com. Some of the stuff works, some of the stuff doesn't. It's free. What do you expect? You get what you pay for. Colin Fagan, if you're law enforcement, copy this email address down and send him an email, technologyresourceguide@gmail.com. Colin is retired Southern Oregon Violent Crimes Task Force, I think. Super dude. He does a consulting business now. But Colin, if you send an email from your work email address and identify who you are, he will email you back a PDF file of his law enforcement guide, and it's all full of hyperlinks to all the stuff we've talked about. And then Colin also maintains like Dropbox accounts that you can click on that has boilerplate legal process. Now it's written for Oregon, but it's not hard to change it, you know, to fit you. So that's a super resource. I think we're about done.
Jason said, especially on financial transactions, we see a lot of the ads now where they're saying, hey, I accept Cash App, Venmo, whatever. One thing to do when we have our communication is be like, hey, I just want to make sure that I can make sure you're going to come. Can I front you half the money now? And what trafficker and or sex worker is going to deny that? They're going to be like, no, that's cool. Here's my Cash App. Send me the money. So now we have that cash tag, we send our process to Cash App, and they're very, very responsive with all of the information related to those bank accounts, where all the money's coming from, where all the money's going to, what account it's coming from, what account it's going to. So it's just something on the front end that we can do, as Jason was saying, with our legal process before we even start this. One other thing I like to do is fudge the system a bit and say, this is part of an ongoing active human trafficking investigation in which live victims of human trafficking are currently being sexually exploited. And within 2 hours, you're going to get your information back. So fill that one.
Yeah. But seriously, if nothing else out of all of this, just your officer safety, your personal safety, everything we're talking about with open source intelligence, everything we're talking about with doing your legal process, you need to not do this from your personal stuff. That's like super bad, because it's going to link things together. Another thing, funny story I was going to tell you, if anybody doesn't think that like these apps are recording you constantly, I guarantee you they're recording you constantly. And I wish I could think of what's the newest thing. Let's talk about Moderna vaccines and Moderna. Now, if anybody goes home tonight, and I want you to email me if you start having suggested ads for any sort of Sildenafil, Moderna, and Moderna, because your phone is listening, right? And so has everybody watched The Handmaid's Tale, right? What's the name of the country in Handmaid's Tale, the fictional country that the United States becomes? Gilead? Gilead, okay. So I binge watched Handmaid's Tale, and then all of a sudden Facebook thought I had AIDS. And I didn't understand why, because I'm like, okay, why am I getting all of these suggested ads for AIDS treatments? Well, there's a large class action lawsuit for some of the AIDS prophylaxis medicines, and most of them are made by a pharmaceutical company called Gilead Pharmaceuticals. And so my phone was hearing Gilead and thought, well, Jason is talking about Gilead, and they make AIDS drugs, so he must have AIDS. And it was just, but it was proof positive for me that the device is listening to you, because it's just something that it didn't have anything to do with my life, and all of a sudden Facebook thought it did. And so that's interesting. Go talk to your phone. Like, find something that has nothing to do with it. Maybe a college that you've never considered or gone to, or a car or something that you've never owned, and just start talking to your phone about, the 2020 Nissan Maxima, and see if you start getting suggested ads. And it's crazy. But here's where that's important. I've written legal process where I've gotten these ambient recordings back from Facebook. I think is where I see it the most, where it's not only crazy that they're recording this stuff, but then they're taking it and they're storing it on their servers, and you can get it back. I had one case one time where the folks used Messenger, and they used it for voice calling a lot. And I guess it ambient records like 30 seconds prior to the call, it records the call, and then it records like 30 seconds after. And so what I had was a lot of these ambient recordings of like, we need to get dope. Where can we get dope? Let's go get dope. And then there's the call of like, hey, we need dope. Yes, we're going to come buy dope. And then like 30 seconds of like, yeah, we're going to get dope. So it's crazy what they have. I think, Grace, I'm late for lunch. We're good?
Thank you. We are going to break for lunch. I do want to ask, we usually just take a 30-minute lunch instead of the whole hour. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Our food is coming. It's going to be boxed. We're going to put it on the table. So just give us a few minutes to get all that ready, but y'all can break, go to the bathroom, do what you need to do, get your drinks. Thanks.